Welcome, Mr. Secretary. We are awfully proud in Rhode Island to be the home port of the NOAA ship, the Henry Bigelow, in Newport. We also have a significant NOAA presence in Narragansett Bay, and NOAA itself has been planning over the last several years to consolidate their fleet with better infrastructure and better facilities, and again, saving money, they hope. This committee has been incredibly helpful because they provided over the last several years about $4.5 million for planning so that NOAA can undertake their plans to consolidate. And Newport offers a superb location, not only the Navy base, but also the University of Rhode Island School of Oceanography, the U.S. Maritime Resource Center, which trains all the deck officers, the uniform deck officers for NOAA, is located in Middletown, Rhode Island. And we're trying to build off of a model which we use with the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard was able to work with the Navy, in fact, even got Navy funding, some funding, to consolidate 3 buoy tenders into Newport, Rhode Island. All of this, however, has to be based on an executable plan from NOAA. And as I'm sure you're aware, Mr. Secretary, the 2018 omnibus required NOAA to produce its plan within 60 days, and that would be May 23rd, 2018. Can you give me the status of the plans? Because we're talking about within weeks the plan will be delivered.
Well, we're aware about the $2 million provided in the fiscal year 18 omnibus for the Newport project and the 60-day requirement. The Navy and U.S. Coast Guard are working very actively with NOAA to try to put together the full consolidation plan, and they're continuing to review the project and work with the Navy to finalize all of the assessments. Meanwhile, while the Newport construction takes place, there's an existing interagency agreement between NOAA and the Navy to home port NOAA's ship, the Henry Bigelow, yes, with which I think you're quite familiar, Senator.
Yes, sir.
The Henry Bigelow and any other visiting ships at the Naval Station in Newport through fiscal year 2022. So we have, the program is underway, we're working on it, but meanwhile, we have a interim solution that we think will be very helpful.
Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Again, we very much like to see the plan promulgated pursuant to the Omnibus Appropriations Bill, and then work with you and the Department of the Navy and the Coast Guard on getting it to fruition. I've already had conversations with Secretary Spencer, the Secretary of the Navy. He is enthusiastic. He's always enthusiastic. He's enthusiastic about this joint effort. Not a singular effort, but a joint effort. So thank you, Mr. Secretary. And let me turn now, since, as we've noted, Providence County is the one location for the census test that's taking place right now, and we've been involved with it. One of the observations I'd make, even though, as you rightly point out, the citizenship question is not in the census, because of all the publicity, the perception of many people in the state is that it is in the question. So it might have unwittingly an effect on the response. But one thing, from listening to your response to Senator Shaheen, can you assure us that none of this data will be, can legally be used by law enforcement agencies, including in deportation hearings?
None of the data is permitted by Title 13 to be used for any other purpose, even more benign purposes than deportation, number one. Number two, every census employee who has access to the data takes a lifetime oath not to divulge it. Third, we've put in all kinds of firewalls and separation of data and as best we can to try to protect against any kind of cybersecurity attack that might occur. We're taking it very, very seriously and are going to work very hard not only to assure the public that it's the case, but to make sure that it is correct and that the data will not be inappropriately use. So we feel very, very strongly about that. And I'm happy to say that since Title 13 was passed, to the best of my knowledge, there has never been a single violation of it with respect to any census data. And that's now quite a few years, couple of decades, in fact. So we are very cautiously optimistic that we can continue that. And as you know, the penalties are severe. Someone who violates it can be fined up to $250,000 and up to 4 years in prison. And I think most people would find that a pretty big deterrent.
Yes. Just one very, very quick comment. Having seen the rollout of and this is the only one in the country, there are efforts to involve organizations like public libraries because there's the internet self-response. My sense from the field, if you will, is that there can be a lot more effort to publicize and bring in public libraries and other centers so that you can have a higher response rate, because many people don't have access to a computer unless they go to the library. So if you could look at that, Mr. Secretary, I'd appreciate it.
We are, and I'm happy to say that the initial response rates in Providence are very, very close to our ultimate target. We're hoping eventually to get a self-response rate of about 47.2%. We're already at 45%. So it's pretty clear that the efforts are working pretty well. And as you know, we experimented, and it looks successfully, with putting kiosks in, I think it's 30 of the post offices around. Yeah. And that's proven to be very good, because people go pretty frequently to the post office in an urban setting. We now, yesterday, started the non-response follow-up. We have 900 field workers in the field working to get those folks who had not already responded either by internet or by mail or through the kiosks or whatever, or by phone, to dig them out and get responses. So we also are engaging very large number of community organizations, as you have mentioned, and thus far that cooperation seems quite good.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for your very thoughtful answers. Thank you.